Before we kick this bad boy off, I'd like to throw this little nugget in early. The recent video I put out regarding the killer coupling of the Arkhamverse got quite a bit of unexpected traction, which is mildly ironic since that memory came straight out of the blue and I simply wanted to share it with you guys. But as I read through the comments, it made me look back and realize that, hey, this could be something to rant about. However, I've also got something else I would like to rant about involving Kratos.
Your brother was a threat to Olympus, Kratos. What was done had to be done.
You should have saved him. I should have saved him. You let this happen to me. You were supposed to protect me.
So I will leave the choice up to you, lovely folk, to tell me what you'd like to see first. Link to the poll to decide my next video in the description below. So if you were to take even the briefest of briefest glances at the culture or mythos of ancient Egypt, the chances of you coming across the name Iset are well over 100%, which isn't too much of a shock considering that she, much like Apollo in the Greek pantheon, has many shoes to fill. Such positions include motherhood, medicine, the moon, fertility, and magic, in addition to being the first queen of Egypt, the mother of Horus, and is typically seen as a guardian angel of sorts for the pharaoh, with two of her most notable feats including the resurrection of Osiris after their brother Set decided to carve him up like a Thanksgiving turkey, and how she was able to gain the immense power she wields as Egypt's mistress of magic, which coincidentally is the subject of today's essay considering her power is nothing to be overlooked by any stretch. Because despite being mostly associated with rulership and motherhood, she has the capacity to be one of the most terrifying deities on her side of the Mediterranean. And the explanation as to how and why she's able to wield such power goes back to Egypt's head honcho himself, the sun god Ra. You see, to the Egyptians, Ra was not just some god who dragged the sun across the sky, but also the first ever pharaoh and the maker of, well, just about everything. The mythology speaks of him emerging from the primeval ocean Nun and shaping the world by speaking, breathing, and spitting it into existence. And way back when, the sun god did what all deities did when they found out about themselves being supplanted by their descendants via prophecy. Do everything in their power to stop it. Let's see now, we have a prophecy and a king who wants to make sure it doesn't happen. I can only imagine what's going to happen next. And thus, he took it upon himself to separate his children, Geb and Nut, to ensure that they can't join on any day or any night, and therefore he can keep his throne and keep sailing across the sky. However, they had friends in high places and requested the aid of Thoth, the god of knowledge, who proceeded to gamble with the moon god Khonshu until he was able to gain enough moonlight to create 5 new nights where the star-crossed lovers could be together. And bippity-boppity-boo, we now have Osiris, Set, Iset, Nephthys, and Harmachis. I sincerely hope I'm pronouncing that correctly because I've never heard that name said out loud. Feel free to correct me in the comments below. Cut to some time later, where we see Ra, who has aged considerably over the millennia and has begun to drool here and there as he makes his way across the sky. The aging itself is due to him taking on the form of a man, so he can rule over both the mortal and immortal realms in the same form. You could say that he was cutting out the middleman in a way, and that now he's basically Grandpa Simpson, but with godly power, which is, quite the striking mental image. Although, personally, I like to think of it as him aging from dawn to dusk, as he's typically associated with numerous solar deities, and him in the Egyptian underworld, also called the Duat, is him in a dead-like state as he recharges for a new dawn, which is why individuals like Horus, Set, Bastet, Sobek, Sekhmet, and Iset tend to act as bodyguards for him during his nightly journey. Anyways, one of these days, Iset decides to get rather cheeky and fulfill the prophecy as she proceeds to gather the drool that lands upon the earth and shapes it into a cobra that strikes the sun god in the ankle the next time he sails across the sky. An event that catches Egypt's head honcho off guard, as nothing of his own creation should be able to harm him. So Ra, now writhing in agony, calls upon all the gods to try and aid him in his hour of need, and of course they all come running, but nothing they do is able to help him recover until Iset arrives, obviously feigning ignorance of the situation. But surprise, surprise, she can't do anything either, and decides to put the masterstroke of her plan into action. She asks the sun god for his secret name, or better known as his Ren, something that in the Egyptian mythos and culture was a part of one's soul in addition to their identity, as it was believed that if your name was remembered, then you would never truly die. And, of course, since Ra is the king of the gods and the maker of Egypt itself, his Ren carries an exceptional amount of weight and power. Anyone watching this who has read anything remotely published by Rick Riordan knows exactly what I'm talking about. It was also believed that if you could gain access to the secret name of an individual, then you would have power over them and could command them to do whatever you wanted, whenever you wanted. So, given the situation at hand and his position in the Pantheon, I would imagine Ra would be utterly terrified in this moment. So the OG Pharaoh decides to list just about every name and alias he's known by, but nothing changes and the pain eventually forces him to give in, and he gives Iset his secret name, under the stipulation that none but she can know. She agrees, he tells her, she heals his affliction by mixing his Ren with her magics, and from this point forward, Iset and Osiris rule over Egypt and everything within its borders as Ra retires into the sky. Now, at first glance, this may seem like a minor event, but Iset legitimately retired a primeval deity by stealing his power via treachery. And since Ra, in many cases, is considered to be a self-created god that can bring things into existence by simply going it's quite safe to assume that Iset's power levels are now off the charts compared to, well, just about everyone else in her pantheon. Up until this point, she was just your average run-of-the-mill goddess, was quite skilled when it came to the art of healing and magic. And as we can see, she was also quite skilled when it came to manipulation, since she used Ra's own power against him to claim his full might. This is the kind of trickery that could make Loki blush. And now, in the aftermath of this event, she has the power to resurrect her dead husband and make a magical dongle for him so Horus could be conceived, and she does it with little to no effort, which should really put things into perspective of how powerful she has become. With a simple flick of her wrist, Iset can rip the universe apart with Lovecraftian levels of power, and then rebuild it however she so chooses. So the Egyptians should be relieved of how level-headed she was, since she only used her power to claim the title of Pharaoh for Osiris, resurrect him later, and then aid her son in his battles against Set. Although, there was that one time that Horus decided to decapitate Iset because she showed some sympathy towards her brother Set for about 8 seconds. Talk about a temper tantrum, eh? And she did accompany Ra on his nightly journey from time to time, and would often defend him against the Snake Apophis, who is also a Lovecraftian primeval deity that can also rip the universe apart. And as much as I appreciate Iset not going full Maleficent or Kratos at any point in the stories wherein which she's featured, I feel like her being cast into the role of a villainess could be a decent story, especially if you were to play it from the other side and make Set a more sympathetic character, considering his own wife and Iset had this urge to swap appearances from time to time. So that was my little revision of one of my first videos, and I hope you lot enjoyed it. Going back into some of my old books on ancient Egypt was like a breath of fresh air, and if anyone here would like me to cover any other deities or mythical stories, do let me know in the comments section. In the meantime, don't forget to cast your vote in the poll for my next upload, share this video with anyone you know who enjoys topics like this, and consider subscribing as well. With that being said, Godspeed, and I hope to see each of you in the next installment.